Ladies and gentlemen,
everybody wants the prize, but nobody wants to pay the price.
Can they be pushed? Do they have a sense of urgency? Do they want to be great?
And then, of course, you look at them and be like, yeah, right.
Everybody wants to be on your team when you're on top.
I saw the angel and the marble, and I carved until I set him free.
Go be somebody, bro.
But the most important part of the Be Somebody journey is the resilience.
Welcome to the Be Somebody Podcast, your real and raw destination for all things entrepreneurship, leadership, and culture. One of the top-rated business podcasts in the world. Now give it up for your host, Be Somebody Inc. and BSB Group International founder and CEO, Kash Shaikh.
Welcome to the Be Somebody Podcast, broadcasting live from Cincinnati, Ohio, right here in the Be Somebody HQ. I'm your host, Kash Shaikh, with my boy, my partner in crime, Herbie Pilata.
What's up, Kash? We're back.
What's up, Herbie, man? I can't believe it feels like it's been decades.
I don't even know when we were last in here.
You know, I've been getting so much mail, not even email, but like letters and like telegrams and like singing telegrams from around the world. People are saying, what the hell is up with the Be Somebody Podcast? Where have you guys been? It's been weeks. It's been months. It's been a couple months.
It has been, and we've been busy. We've been all over the place. We've obviously got everything that's going on here at Be Somebody. We've got our sister company, BSB Group International. And Kash, you're a busy man as well. Not only are you running the companies on a daily basis, but you're on panels. You're speaking at events. And most recently, of course, the Break the Ceiling, Touch the Sky.
That's right, man. I mean, it's crazy because the fall is always the craziest and most busy time for us. Mm-hmm. So it was a bit aggressive to think that we could keep our podcast scheduled during that time with everything going on. But, man, I feel really grateful and blessed to have been a part of so many events as the event world has shifted to, you know, virtual everything, virtual panels, virtual conferences, virtual galas. Is it gala or gala?
I don't know. Galas, sure.
Virtual galas. And yes, I got to be a part of Break the Ceiling, Touch the Sky, which is an amazing global summit founded by my good friend and mentor, Anthony Rose. He was actually my first boss when I worked at Procter Gamble. So it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. We've kept in touch for about 18 years. And he founded this summit to help drive awareness for gender diversity and women in leadership. It's the largest women in leadership conference and platform in the world. I've had the chance to speak at it in Singapore for 4 straight years, spoken at New York, and now we did the virtual summit. That was a great experience, talking with some amazing women leaders from across the world. I had 2 outstanding executives on the panel that I was on. And we're going to continue that theme today, which is what I'm really pumped up about, Herbie. But plus, there's all this other stuff going on. I mean, in case anybody doesn't know, we're in the midst of a tumultuous election season.
I've heard, yeah.
And everybody knows we shoot and then we actually broadcast and publish our podcast a couple weeks later. So who knows where we're going to be in a couple weeks. Right now, it's mid-November. Let's see what happens when you get everything together and get behind the scenes and chop up this podcast and push it out there. I don't know what date it's going to be.
It takes a long time.
It takes a while to put all this stuff together. But what we do know is that we had a historic election. We had a historic turnout for this election. Yep. And no matter what side that you're on, who you voted for, hopefully everybody is pretty excited and pretty passionate about the opportunity our country has here in the United States to have the first ever female vice president, especially a female of color, a woman of color in that leadership position. It's such an amazing milestone for our country. And I think everybody that watches or listens to our podcast, I think, Herbie, is pretty happy about that because, as you know, we've got a high black and brown audience and fellowship that follow us. I think it's because of you, dude.
I don't know about that.
I think you're the reason why all these brown folk and black folk love our podcast, dude.
Well, I'll take it. I love everybody. So
I love everybody, but no, man. So it's a huge milestone for the country.
Yeah.
And I think about my mom, who was an immigrant from South Asia. We got to get my mom on the show, by the way, at some point. She was the first female engineer in the history of the country of Pakistan, which is pretty amazing. And she came over here, and her and my dad struggled and grinded their way to a successful life and career here in America. And to think that someone like her, someone like her was Kamala Harris's mom, and now we have a vice president who represents the African American culture, the South Asian culture, the immigrant culture. And that's something a lot of people couldn't even imagine very short time ago.
Yeah, I have a small daughter at home, 20 months old, and just seeing the news and it makes me like emotional thinking about it today. But knowing that a female is able to be vice president in this country, she will grow up not knowing that's not normal.
Right.
That's just going to be the normal for her. She's going to know that when she was a small child, that a female was able to be the first vice president. So just really cool moment for the country.
Yeah, very, very awesome, very inspiring. And our guest today, Tiana Conley, is going to be another inspiring person to talk to because she has a similar lineage and background and heritage and life experiences as Kamala Harris, because her parents are actually African American and Asian. So she, talk about almost like synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
And serendipity, the perfect timing to have a guest on our show who's an executive, an inspiring leader from the corporate world, who I work with in my days at Procter Gamble, but also a woman of color who shares that biracial heritage. Man, I can't wait to hear what Tiana has to say and really talk about the role of women in the workforce, the role of women in leadership, the role of women in changing the dynamics and the dialogue of this country.
Yes.
But before we get into it, Herbie, because I know you've just been waiting for the last few months to do your intro, man. I know you've just been annoying your wife, Kat, just screaming at the top of your lungs in the morning, at night, in the shower, trying to get your intro on. We're going to set you loose here in a second. But before we do, I want to talk about some of the numbers, man, because we always try to drop some knowledge with the stats. So in August of 2020, the USA Today looked at 279 top executives listed at the 50 biggest companies on the S&P, the Standard & Poor's. 274 are either white, Hispanic, or Asian, and only 5 are black.
Wow.
So only 1.8% of the top 100 are led by an African-American leader. For every 100 men promoted to manager in the corporate world, according to a study by McKinsey, only 85 women were promoted. And that gap is even larger when you look at minority women, particularly women from Hispanic or African-American backgrounds. Only 58 black women, only 71 Latinas were promoted. And according to the Wall Street Journal, women today lead 167 of the country's top 3,000 companies. And that's more than double what it was a decade ago.
Wow.
But it's still only 6%, under 6%. And lastly, Herbie, according to McKinsey's annual Women in the Workplace study that took place this past summer during the heart of the pandemic, women, and especially women of color, are more likely to have been laid off or furloughed during the COVID-19 crisis.
Wow.
So even though we've made so many strides, and even though we have this magical milestone of the first ever woman of color vice president, we are still so far behind. We talked about it at Break the Ceiling, Touch the Sky on the conference that I was just at that we talked about. And the numbers tell the same story. So I'm looking forward to talk about all of this with Tiana because she's on the front lines. She's one of the pioneers. I always hear her and see her on LinkedIn, on her social media, really trying to push for and drive change, which is inspiring. So it's going to be a great conversation, man.
Man, I'm excited. Let's bring her on. Let's welcome to the show a leader with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She then went on to get her MBA from Xavier University's Williams College of Business. And for the last 18 years, this CPG marketing veteran has led campaigns for brands including Tide, Olay, Cottonelle, and Jim Beam. And today, she's the Vice President of Global Cereal at the Kellogg Company. Please welcome, from Chicago, Illinois, Tiana Conley!
Wow.
Tiana!
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing well, and I don't think I've ever had a better introduction in my entire life.
Well,
you know what?
thank you.
I mean, Herbie is batting 1,000 now because everybody who gets to hear that always gives him that extra love. So don't make his head too big. He already feels like he should be like working for the Chicago Bulls or something like that.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna get like Herbie before I go into like my next major like executive committee meeting. Like, hey Herbie, can you hype me up before I like run into the
Hey, let's do it. I'm ready.
You know,
Let's do it.
And you know what? We're gonna spill the beans here, Herbie, because Herbie has been waiting to do your introduction. I feel like, Tiana, for like 6 or 7 months because we've had to, for some reason or another, have to postpone, reschedule. As we've had like COVID scares, we've had hurricanes, we've had unexpected corporate travel that have prevented us from being here together. So I'm so pumped, Tiana, that we finally got on the phone with you.
it is. But you know, I feel like it was perfectly ordained for this point in time because something really important has happened between when we originally talked and today, and I think that may make its way into the conversation.
Exactly. You know what? Look, see, you're teeing us up. I mean, we might have to switch you out with Herbie and have you co-host because we actually started the show talking about what a historical moment and historical milestone that we've all been really blessed to experience here in this country with the first ever female vice president, woman of color in such an inspiring leadership position. And, you know, obviously one of the important dynamics to that is her biracial heritage as an African-American and Asian, South Asian woman. And obviously you, as we talked about, have a lot of experience with that as well. So, I mean, I think we could even just start right there, Tiana, since you already teed us up, just of how you're feeling about that milestone and also just how you relate to it personally.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I'm backflipping off the third floor of my building right now with excitement. And I do live in Chicago. I live in the Boys Town neighborhood. So my personal neighborhood was jumping with joy. And Saturday, when the election result was announced, you could literally hear joy in the streets, and car horns were honking. And I grabbed my kids and we went outside for impromptu celebration. There were people. It was like a collective exhale, and there I swear there was like just an informal parade, and people were just dancing, and there was music, and people were banging pots and pans and honking horns and flying flags of America and rainbows, and and people. There was hope
Right.
that I hadn't really seen on people's face for some point in time. And, you know, obviously from a personal standpoint, one of my favorite words is intersectionality. And I think that Kamala really captures that extraordinarily well. And it's something that I've felt in my personal life, being someone who is a woman like Kamala, being someone who is Black like Kamala, being someone who is of Asian descent, the child of an Asian immigrant. I'm also South Asian. My mom is from the Philippines. So that is something else that's very similar to Kamala. And so to have someone that perfectly fits that intersectionality that is quite so rare but becoming less rare, and to see that person occupy really the highest office we've ever seen in the United States of America was absolutely incredible. And I take it a step further, the impact that had on me as a mom, and as the mother of a daughter and a son. You know, I hugged my daughter so tight. She's 6 years old, my son's 7. And I said, I want you to see this woman, and she is a girl like you, and she's Black like you, and she's Asian like you. And she is the most powerful woman in America, and you can be anything you want. And it was just so powerful. And then she goes, I'm riding with Biden and I'm going to dump Trump. And I'm like, you go, girl. Say that's why you're my daughter. That's why you're my daughter.
Yeah, sure.
You know, not to get political. I mean, obviously you guys know where I stand on that. But, you know, I mean, you know, she is her mother's daughter.
That's amazing. I mean, we just put out a piece of content a couple days ago on the Be Somebody channel that really tried to speak to little girls like yours and like folks on our team, their daughters, because we had a similar conversation around the office and around our little text message streams about what this meant for the country and our community and our families. And we put out this little video of these young minority, you know, black and brown children being able to experience this sense of hope and this sense of ambition that they never really had a chance to even dream of before.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I saw your video. Made me cry. It made me cry. I shared it. And it definitely, I think, represents something for girls that's also true of women in the workplace, which is you can't be what you can't see. So it's difficult to recognize yourself or see dreams for yourself that you didn't realize were possible. And so when you see someone that looks like you doing something, you realize, oh, that's something attainable for me. And I think that's what Kamala represents, right? So
right.
Frankly, whether you're my daughter's age, who's 6, or you're my age, who is much older than that, you kind of say, listen, if I have an aspiration, I know I can go get it. Now, does that absolve, as you said, where we are today? Because I do think that's a little bit of the complexity of the situation, and people tend to get stuck in the euphoria of we've achieved a milestone, because there definitely is a glass ceiling that's been broken, but we have to contrast that with the current reality of where we are today, and that there is a lot of progress to be made. So here's something interesting. Black women in C-suite or leadership positions is like 2.7%. Right. But then like back that up and say, okay, like Black women are also the most educated group in the United States. So contrast those two things, right? So people always kind of go and say, well, it's a pipeline issue. Is it really? So is it, I think that there's a disconnect between, what we're seeing as outcomes and kind of drivers, and there's a disconnect between available talent and the ambition of that talent, because there's also statistics showing that Black women are amongst the most ambitious. I think there's something like more than 2 times more likely to demonstrate or want to show ambition to want to progress through leadership levels.
Can you share, Tiana? Because I think that's an important insight that I know I'm sure a lot of folks don't know about, in terms of Black women being the most educated or one of the most educated groups in the country. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so National Center for Education Statistics, and I think the data are 2016. But so they looked at again, intersectionality both by race and by gender, and Black women by enrollment have the highest level of any group. So higher than Asian women, higher than white women, when it comes to women, higher than white men. But it's not translating to opportunity.
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, why is that?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's not hard to be more educated than Herbie Pilata, because I mean, the guy like grew up on the streets of Las Vegas or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
But I know that there was some controversy lately. Some CEO talking about it's a pipeline issue. You posted something on social media that talked about that being factually incorrect. And, I had a lot of conversations with leaders in my own circle and my own like network of influence about like how wrong that was. And really, it's more about the stereotypes and the invisible barriers that exist in a lot of these companies and a lot of these recruiting cycles and recruiting strategies that are limiting the advancement of women of color, and particularly Black women, brown women, or Latinx leaders. But as we get into that, because Herbie's looking at me because he always gets mad at me because I always dive straight into like the heart of everything. But I want to make sure, Tiana, that we get a chance to hear a little bit more about your story and your background. You know, hopefully you remember when we met at Procter Gamble, like in the early days, and you know, so much has happened, and we all grow so much during the years and during the ups and downs of life. But I always knew that you were going to be someone that made a difference and made a dent in whatever that you did. So, love to hear a little bit more about your journey since then.
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully I remember you, of course. I mean, I think that I think you had swagger before that word was invented, so it would definitely be impossible to forget you. Yeah, just a little bit about my background. So as you mentioned, I am from Chicago, and I grew up here. And as I mentioned, I kind of occupy this space of intersectionality of being, a multi-ethnic person. So my father's Black. My mom is an immigrant from the Philippines. And, that I think kind of came up with an interesting perspective being from Chicago, which is very diverse, but also very segregated, to be honest with you. And so, I think it was very, very, very interesting as a child because I never really felt like I neatly fit in anyone's box. Like I was not really all the way Black. Like
Right.
It's like there's something else going on there. I definitely was not purely Asian enough. I definitely wasn't white. And I think that growing up, that meant isolation. That meant like you're not like the others. And I think what that instilled in me was a strong sense of self and independence. I do think there are probably some aspects of that come from my parents for sure, but also then functionally because it's just, I didn't have these natural affinities with other people. And so, I wasn't going to get all these great affirmations from other people because I didn't really belong. So I realized pretty early on that like, if I didn't have kind of a sense of self, a self-drive, self-affirmation and belief in myself, that it probably wasn't going to come from anywhere else.
Tiana, did you try to create a lane where you did fit in, where you could say, I am more of this? Because I just even think about myself as one of like the 3 brown boys in my middle school and high school growing up in the heart of Texas. I even remember when I was in first grade, Matt Oberly asked me, I think we talked about this, Herbie, before. He asked me like why I was brown, and I told him because I fell in mud, because I was so embarrassed in some way or so insecure or so just unknowing at that time. I was 6 years old, whatever it was in first grade, where I didn't really want to be different. And to some extent, that stayed with me, honestly, and I'm not even like proud of it, but I acknowledge it all the way through high school where I wasn't comfortable being brown, and it was always something that I either had to make into a joke or spin into something, but I was always wishing I wasn't, to be honest. And it wasn't until I got into college and saw other people like me or people that I, identify with, and some other like South Asian folks that were cool and played sports and did things like I did. And I was like, hey, there's actually some people out there that I can connect with. And that helped me really rediscover my own heritage and be confident and excited about who I was. But for most of my young life, I was trying to fit into a different group or bucket that I probably didn't fit into because I wasn't proud of who I was.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of people do have that experience. For me, I think less so. I certainly have very young memories of being discriminated against, even by adults. Like, I remember having this one teacher. I remember her name. I feel like I don't want to call her out, Miss Brisboy. Anyway, I feel like I would always be like raising my hand in class, and she would never call on me. And I like remember talking to my mom about it, and I'm like, hey, I'm always raising my hand, and she's never calling on me. And then like, she's basically like, yeah, your teachers are racist. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that sucks. I'm like, can I like go to a different school? And she's basically like, that's like this is part of life. Like, this is going to be a part of your life. So like, you need to like work through this. Like, she always told me, like, you have 3 strikes against you, right? Like, you're a woman, you're Black, you're Asian. So like, this is just going to be a part of your life. So like, you're going to need to learn how to move through life with that. And I think that part of my, comfort with it comes a lot from my parents, if I'm very honest, because I think both of them are, very much this way, but, my dad's an only child. So I think that takes a lot of confidence as a person. And then, my mom, her story of immigration is she came to the United States not speaking any English. And essentially, like, as a child, had like come to school, didn't know any English, and had to like learn.
Was she speaking Tagalog? Mabuhay.
Yes. She had to come, and then she had like an accent, and like my mom came in the in the 70s, so like think like Vietnam time frame, and people are culturally savvy, so they don't really understand like Philippines,
the
Vietnam, like they're not seeing the difference. And so there was like a lot of stigma, and like my mom right now, like her English, she has no accent whatsoever, and my grandmother always had like a super heavy accent, but like my mom worked really hard at that, you know. And so I think that like I think probably having had that experience shaped her in a way to kind of say you need to be kind of strong-willed about it. And so I think maybe having 2 extremely strong-willed parents that experienced a lot of adversity gave me a lot of, probably a lot through my own DNA, but then through their lived experiences, kind of coaching me through my life, kind of equipped me to understand and be prepared to experience that. So, I'm devastated that you had the experience that you had, but that's part of your personal life journey too, that I'm sure shaped you in ways. For me, my parents were kind of like, yeah, like that's kind of the way that my parents or at least it internalized for me was like, well, if they don't get to experience all of you, that's sorry for them.
Right.
Like, too bad, they're missing out. You're Gucci. So
that's awesome. Did that stick with you and carry you through once you got into the corporate world, the working world?
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly helped a lot. Like, I was always pretty independent minded, but I would be a fool to say like I completely did it by myself. I mean, so many mentors, so many coaches, so many friends, so many shoulders cried on, so many vent sessions and things like that. So, I mean, I think it was like a collection of things, right? Like, it was like having like a start point for kind of how you're wired, and then kind of structuring a support system around yourself, right? People that can lift you up, people that can extend a hand, people that boost you up. And then, I think people outside of work too, like people that just like love you, people that just love on you. And when you have those moments where like the self-doubt starts to creep in, or people tell you you're not good enough, and you're like, no way, I am good enough. And they're like, yeah, you are good enough. Or where gaslighting happens, and you're like trying to explain that this situation doesn't seem fair. And then they're trying to tell you that something completely unfair is fair. And you're like, wait, no, this just does not seem right. And having someone that you can go to and say, listen, am I crazy? Or did this situation just happen? And they're like, no, you're not crazy. That actually did happen. And that that was unfair. And you're like, okay, great. Like now I can feel more confident about this situation. Really, really helps. So, I mean, I kind of liken it to it takes a village.
Do you want to share a little bit, Tiana, of how you kind of navigated from P&G in the early days to all the stops along the way that got you to where you are at Kellogg today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, P&G was like an awesome place to start my career, as you well know, because you walk in the door and they give you the keys. And they're like, listen, you're running the business. Like there's no training wheels. There's no trial period. There's no, practice plan. It's like, listen, here, you're running this multi-million-dollar business. Go.
Yeah,
like,
multi-billion, really.
Exactly, right? It's like, they're like, listen, you're in charge. Make good decisions. We'll see you later. And so that was like a phenomenal way to just foundationally learn core skills. And, and I think the other thing that P&G teaches that a lot of places don't is leadership. And how to lead others and how to be a manager. And so, and like actually skill build, which a lot of places just kind of assume you have skills when you walk into the door. So I think that was really phenomenal. But after 10 years, I'm like, and I had spent a lot of time, the majority of my time at P&G, in the beauty care business, on skincare, primarily the Olay business. And it was a super exciting time because the business had doubled in size from 1 billion to 2 billion. So like watching it cross that mark behind the phenomenon that we called mastige, where we saw migration of people from prestige and specialty department stores into the explosion of the food drug mass business, and price points going, on skincare in those channels from $8 and $6 to like $25 and $50. We led that.
Tiana, I still tell the story of the famous Louisiana Purchase, where we had the one dermatologist talk about the pentapeptide in Olay that was the same ingredient that was in Strivectin, which was hundreds of dollars more expensive, and it led to like off the shelf, off the hook sales of everything in New Orleans. And we started calling Louisiana Purchase and started to try to replicate that program around the country, as you know. And those were the fun days of like really kind of cracking something in a way that people hadn't done it before, reframing value in a way people hadn't done it before, and it became really the hallmark of the Olay brand.
Absolutely. So after 10 years of kind of working on, this kind of beauty business, I'm like, I'm gonna go spread my wings and see what I can do. What is the next most aspirational thing I can do? I'm going to go work on toilet paper.
Yeah.
Like, yes, because my thought process was, our budgets in beauty were enormous. I mean, I don't know that I'm ever going to see a marketing spend like that again. I worked on the biggest launch at the time in history on the skincare business. It was the $100 million launch of the Olay Affinity business. Right. And it was literally an enormous blockbuster launch. And I'm like, listen, if I can sell toilet paper, where our advertising spend is, anywhere from 2 to 4%,
$4.53.
And it's a super commodity, then I actually know I'm a good marketer because we have no spend. Right. And so I'm like, I'm going to give that a shot. So then I went over to Kimberly-Clark to sell the global bath tissue portfolio. And that was that was a cash cow business. It was like a $4.5 billion business that was sold everywhere. Everyone wipes their butt around the world. Go figure. And it was a really complicated portfolio. It was like 45 different brands and all different tiers, everything from private label to like, quadruple ply. And it was really a journey into creating a way of working, a business model, an organization structure, that, it was a really, really exciting ride. And obviously learning a totally new business and traveling around the world several times along the way.
Yep.
And the other exciting thing I did when I was at Kimberly-Clark was I had 2 children. And that was a ride also.
Nothing like toilet paper to inspire you to start a family.
I'm telling you, and listen, it makes you use a lot. I think I was pregnant and traveling with both of my kids, and I feel like I peed in like every single country around the world a lot, in pit stops in very random places, because when you're pregnant, you just need to use the restroom a lot. Yeah. So then after Kimberly-Clark, I wanted to, I hit a point in time in my life in which I was going through something personal, and I went through a divorce. And I found myself a single mom with like 2 kids under 2. And I'm like, this is hard. That's kind of an understatement, perhaps. And I'm like, I think I would like to do this closer to near my family. And I had been at that point in Cincinnati for 15 years. And I'm like, I think it's time to call it and move back to Chicago. So I did that, and I came back to Chicago with Beam Suntory, working on the spirits industry on the Jim Beam brand. And that was awesome. It's a totally different industry, and a completely different, like similar but different in the sense that it's a highly regulated market. So you have to sell through a distributor because of all the hangover from prohibition, actually. And that was like a just completely different way of selling. That was really, really cool. And that kind of brings us to current, which, after leaving there, came over to Kellogg, to where I'm now working on global cereal, which is such a thrill. It's the flagship business of the company, and kind of the bedrock, what really started Kellogg, and some of the most exciting and treasured brands ever. My personal favorite, Frosted Flakes, which essentially just tastes and smells like my childhood. Yeah,
me too. I was about to say I grew up on Frosted Flakes.
Yes, but also things like Special K and raisins.
But Tiana, I have to tell you, the way I ate Frosted Flakes is I filled my bowl up to the very top, and I drank my milk in a glass. I didn't mix the milk in, because I wanted the flakes to stay crispy.
Sweet,
So I was like, I would like shovel a bunch of the dry flakes in my mouth, and then I would chug some milk. And my whole family thought I was crazy, but that was like the recipe that I had for my morning ritual.
I feel that though. I would do like that too. I would do like a little bit of milk, have that little bit, and then a little bit more milk. So I'm feeling you on the crispy flakes. I totally, Listen, we have a little bit more healthier things in the portfolio.
You're right.
As well now too, so everything's not a sugar bomb, but, but we have RX and AM oats and things like that with it. But we also make kashi and Bare Naked. So we have, more natural and organic products in our line as well. So it's, it's such an interesting company. And one other really phenomenal thing about Kellogg is that one of the core tenets of the company, and this is really why I joined, besides the fact that it has a super cool portfolio, which by the way, also has Pop-Tarts in our portfolio, and you'll love this because we worked at Procter Gamble, also acquired Pringles. So Pringles is in the portfolio.
Oh yeah,
too.
Forgot that. That's awesome.
Right? Talk about a full circle.
Full circle.
So,
yep.
So I actually have colleagues that I work with at P&G that got acquired, and that now we work together again, which is really fun. So it's a really small world. But one of the reasons that kind of pushed me over the edge is that I really, really believe in this company is philanthropy is in the DNA of Kellogg, and there is a belief that we strive to feed people in need. So this is really part of what the company stands for, and we put our money where our mouth is. So like if we think about just COVID alone, we've done now over $18 million in donations for COVID relief. But it's just,
Wow.
it's core and central to who we are. Like it's just a part of our founders' value that has always been true. And it's not something that necessarily you see like a ton of like advertising around, but it's so central. You know, and we believe in giving people better days.
Yep.
Because of the best day starts with breakfast, and that's really kind of core and central to who we are. So I think that for me, like there has to be like a component of purpose in what I do. You know, I've just reached kind of a point where I understand that in order to be motivated, I have to know that what I'm doing is not just for a paycheck, and that there's a deeper impact that I'm having on people, on society, and what I'm doing and how I'm spending my time.
You know, it's really interesting because one of our core clients at our sister company, BSB Group International, is the Kroger company, which obviously there's a lot of overlap and connection between Kroger and Kellogg's, but we've been helping them in some core areas with their Zero Hunger, Zero Waste initiative, which is so focused on food insecurity. And I didn't realize how much work and what a strong focus food insecurity was, and eliminating food deserts, particularly in communities of color, was for the Kellogg company. And I thought that was so cool, a lot of the work that you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so I have to tell you, so Feeding Freedom is actually my program. So it came about in response to what I like to say is two pandemics, dual pandemics. The first pandemic is obviously COVID-19, and the second pandemic is systemic racism that came about in this year. And, you know, our company kind of came to a crossroads because, like many others, we kind of said, listen, we got to pick a side. We have to pick a side. Like, are we going to be silent and complicit? Or are we going to come out and be anti-racist? And I have to say, I'm so proud that Kellogg said, no, we're going to take a stance and we're going to be anti-racist. And we came out, we made a statement, but we donated $1 million to NAACP. And listen, people may say, okay, well, great. Yeah, everybody's doing things, but you have to understand the context. For a company as conservative as ours, Kellogg will be 115 years old next year, and is located in Battle Creek, Michigan, and has like really not touched this space a ton anywhere in the like social justice, racial like that's just not really like the space that the company plays in. So to kind of come out and say something and declare something and put commitments behind it.
Why did they do it? Why did they do it this time, Tiana?
Consumers and society and our employees said, you have a choice to make. Like, it's not good. I think we've kind of come to a situation in 2020 where being not racist is not good enough anymore. Right. And I think that's new. I think that's new because I've been working in, you know, as a shadow job to all my jobs in diversity, equity, inclusion for free, as, you know, kind of what I've done more or less, you know, as my night job in some form for my entire career. And I do believe this has been a tipping point in this year where people are like, no, we are not going for not racist anymore. Like, you've got to be like, are you racist or are you anti-racist? Like, choose one. We're fine with whatever you choose. Just please choose one. And then we'll kind of behave accordingly. And the company bravely stood up and said, we're going to be anti-racist. And so just to kind of finish the story on Feeding Freedom, what we decided to develop from a communication standpoint as a result was communication around that's not branded to Kellogg, but just kind of illuminating where does systemic injustice occur in the food ecosystem. So think about everything from farming and agriculture, sourcing, how the supply chain, how food flows into stores. You mentioned food deserts, but also then how food assistance works, what the distribution and selection is in stores, programs, government programs, etc. And put together kind of compelling communication series to drive education, awareness, and action around understanding those systemic injustices.
And Tiana, I was just thinking as you were talking, about, because we've talked a lot about it on our show, how we believe this time is different when it comes to social justice, social injustice, racism, the voices that companies are now speaking with.
I think that the difference comes down to, do you believe that diversity is diversity a business imperative for you or not? Okay, like as a company. And if it is a business imperative, then treat it as such. Like,
right.
We don't declare that winning at Walmart is a business imperative and then like have a feel-good talk series about it.
Right.
That's not how we win on that topic.
Right.
Like, if we feel that winning at Walmart is a business imperative, like we put strategies in place.
We put action plan, have a scorecard, all that.
Action plan.
Yep.
We track it, we measure it, like
right.
And so like, why would we treat diversity and inclusion any differently? Like, so I think it kind of comes down to do you believe in it or do you not believe in it? And if you believe in it, then you have to treat it like a business imperative. And I think that's just the bottom line.
Yep.
I mean, I think that the business case is well established. You've seen the McKinsey study on diversity. We know that the likelihood of financial performance is like 35% higher for executive teams in the top quartile for ethnic diversity. We know that. So it's just a fact. It's a fact that if your leadership and your workforce is more diverse, that you're going to get a stronger financial return. And that's important whether you're for profit, not for profit. We're there to make money, right? So the business case is there, is the commitment there, and the commitment is not saying that you're committed. The commitment is in the action that you show to demonstrate that commitment. So that would kind of be my feeling about it. But I think another thought that I have about that is that we also, it's also a bit of a tricky subject overall, in the sense that the workplace is just a mini slice of what's happening in society. So I also don't necessarily feel that it's a lot to place the burden on companies to solve the problems that we're facing in broader society. Now, I'm not saying that they should fester or it's should be allowed to continue. Like there's a lot of work to do and we need to do it, right? And by the way, I believe companies can and should play a role in solving, but there are some fundamental things going wrong in society in this space that, you don't really need to look any further than the U.S. election to kind of see that.
I was just thinking beyond obviously the macro of the election. Even on the basic social engagement on platforms like LinkedIn, where you think that you're posting something that seems like standard, the standard operating procedure of equality, diversity, and inclusion. You look through some of the comments, man, and I'm shocked by some of the thinking that's out there. But I really do believe that now is the time for companies to speak on what they believe and really characterize who they are and create some of those lines in the sand, because to your point, not only is it does it make financial sense, but it also creates an impact on a cultural standpoint that we know will impact the companies and those organizations for years to come.
Totally. I do think it has to come from an authentic place, though, a purely authentic place. And if it's not authentic, it will show.
I would love for you to talk about the topic of allyship, because I know we had talked about it in the past, and I know there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, I believe in this movement. I believe in this tipping point. I believe in this belief system. I'm not black or brown. So what do I do? How should I act to help advocate and push forward some of these conversations and topics that we're talking about?
My thoughts around allyship are perhaps slightly unconventional in the sense that I don't see allyship as a noun. I see allyship as a verb. Allyship is not an award to be granted or a badge to be worn. That's silly to me because it centers on you than the ally versus the person you're supposed to be lifting up.
Right.
Allyship requires you giving up something to advocate on behalf of someone else. And that could be social capital, that could be opportunities for yourself. Allyship is hard. Allyship requires sacrifice. And so if you're not struggling in your allyship journey, you're doing it wrong. If it feels easy, you're probably doing it wrong. And I'll leave you maybe with a provocative thought on it. There was a study from leanin.org from earlier this summer, and they surveyed women and men too, but I'm going to focus on the data for women for a moment. And they asked white women, do you see yourself as allies or colleagues of other races and ethnicities? And 81% of white women said yes.
Right.
Then they asked black women, how many of you have white allies? Now keep in mind, 81% of white women said, yes, I'm an ally to colleagues of other races and ethnicities. So black women, how many of you have white allies? The number was 10%.
Wow.
That is a hell of a gap.
Yep.
And I think what that to me would indicate is a disconnect on definition. If you put your own comfort or your own economic interest or whatever reason you voted ahead of advocating for the rights of others, or their rights being violated, or their rights being in question, or their humanity being devalued, then you're not an ally.
Right. You don't check that sacrifice box of allyship because you've put your other issues, whether it's financial or whatever it is, above the issues that are really affecting people from a social justice standpoint.
Correct, because you're looking at allyship from a self-centered lens, and that would not be the definition of allyship. So that would be maybe an area to investigate, that if you are interested in allyship, to maybe look at what your axis of orientation is, and if it's you're probably not an ally.
Love that. Love the way that you put that, Tiana. And I think we could talk about this forever. So Herbie, we might have to bring Tiana back
Part two.
to talk about part two, because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's something, like I said, that since the early days of founding the first South Asian fraternity in the country down at UT in 1998, it's been core to like who I am and what we try to build with Besomebody. And Tiana, you've always been someone that I've looked to and been inspired by with everything that you're doing. So I really hope that you and I can figure out how we can partner to push some of this forward, because I really believe now is the time, and I really believe in everything that you've been doing and you are doing to make a difference.
Absolutely, and likewise, and it's going to take all of us working together to get it done.
Awesome. Well, I will also like to say before we let you go, Tiana, that like I know a lot of people, but and I feel pretty proud of my network, but I don't know anyone that went from skincare to toilet paper to whiskey to cereal. I mean, I think you got the most diverse, career trajectory, career heritage, career lineage. of anyone that I've ever met. So I'm impressed, Tiana.
Thank you. I think it just comes down to understanding consumers and insights, and that's what I love. And I think if you care about people and care about insights, I think you can pretty much work on anything.
Yeah, just don't pour Jim Beam in your Frosted Flakes like Herbie. That was his little trick.
Like,
I wasn't going to say anything.
Listen, if it's a rough morning, it may come down to it. In 2020, let's not rule that out. Okay?
Exactly.
Anything's possible.
Exactly. Tiana, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for everything you're doing, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Kash. Thank you, Herbie.
Bye. Thanks, Tiana.
Another inspiring conversation, Herbie.
Man, we hit so many topics, from the election to whiskey to how you consume your cereal.
My Frosted Flakes, man, back in the day. Shout out to my dad for pouring me that cup of milk where I could just chow down with the dry and crispy Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, man. We covered so many different topics, Kash. So, I think we've got to get right to it. What was the one big thing?
So many amazing things from Tiana. So many inspiring points of view. But for me, the thing that stuck with me from the conversation was that if you really want to be an ally, if you really want to show that you care about someone else in a meaningful way with action behind it, you got to give up something. You got to sacrifice something. Life has got to get harder for us to make it easier for someone else. And if we all embrace that attitude and embrace that understanding that we are going to take a hit, we are going to cut back, we are going to lose a little something, but in the process, someone else is going to gain. That's an amazing place for our communities and our society to be.
Man, it's perfectly said, Kash, and just so well timed with where we are in society right now. So thank you.
Thanks, man.
And thank you for listening to the Be Somebody podcast. Be sure to check out besomebody.com for our full audio and video experience, or listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get yours. We out.
You.